So as you know, East Jerusalem has been under the Israeli control since '67. And ever since, the Palestinians in East Jerusalem haven't had any representation in the municipality of Jerusalem. And it's a very important thing to have representation in any decision-making body, because then it is one mechanism to have your voice heard, and it's also one of those mechanisms where you can actually ensure that your rights are fulfilled, while you're paying the same taxes as your counterparts in West Jerusalem. So now we're going to talk a little bit about that. I have three speakers with us here today. So Dr. Lior Lehrs from the Hebrew University, Professor Oren Barak, also from the Hebrew University, and Dr. Adis Sorry. Okay, I'm sorry, it's a little bit confusing. Thank you. So to start with, Dr. Lior will be presenting with us the policy document. So he is a postdoctoral fellow at the Harry Truman Research Institute and Leonard Davis Institute for International Relations at the Hebrew University. He received his PhD for a thesis about private peace, entrepreneurs, and conflict resolution processes. Dr. Lior will present the policy paper about the leadership and political representation in Jerusalem, please.
Hello, everybody. So in this panel, we will focus on the question of political representation after we discuss all the other themes. And I will try to present the policy paper and the main points, the main results of the project in this specific topic. So I will start with a few words of background when we're talking about political representation in Jerusalem. So first of all, we have in Jerusalem municipal election every 5 years. You need to vote in 2 tickets, one for the mayor and the second one for the party that will participate in the city council. In the city council, there are 31 members. Today, based on the results of the last election, half of it are representative of the ultra-Orthodox parties, the religious parties, and the rest are divided between right-wing, center-left parties. But if you want to understand the question of political representation in the Israeli-Palestinian context between East and West Jerusalem, we need to go back to '67, as it was mentioned. So until '67, we had 2 municipalities. We had the Israeli municipality and we had the Jordanian municipality in the East. After '67, as it was mentioned, East Jerusalem was annexed to Israel. The Palestinians who live in this area were granted with the status of resident, Israeli resident, not a citizen, but they have the right to vote, to participate in the municipal election. But as already mentioned, they are boycotting the election because of political reasons, because they don't recognize the occupation in East Jerusalem. We need to mention that during the 80s, during the 90s, there was actually a informal political leadership of the Palestinians. The most important leader was Faisal Husseini, and the Orient House that you can see here was actually some kind of an informal political center of the Palestinian in East Jerusalem. But in 2001, it was closed. Faisal Husseini died, and since then you can sense the political vacuum in East Jerusalem. The situation changed. We just mentioned another point, that in order to address the complexity, the diversity in Jerusalem, the city developed the tool of neighborhood council. And today we have in Jerusalem 30 what we call minhanim kilatim, community centers, community councils in different neighborhoods in Jerusalem, when 7 of them are in East Jerusalem, in Palestinian neighborhood in East Jerusalem. It's also important to mention the strong and vibrant civil society organization that we have in Jerusalem, that are very, very important actor. And we can see actually that many very interesting and very important civil society initiatives and projects in Israel actually started in Jerusalem. And it's probably because of the unique structure in the city, because it's a meeting point between so many groups and communities. Now, you already heard a lot about the project and about our work, but I will just mention again that the main goal is to bring the voices of the residents of Jerusalem, to hear them, and that usually they are not taken under consideration, and to bring the voices, the Israelis and the Palestinians living in Jerusalem. In this group, the thematic group, we had 3 groups, the Israeli, Palestinian, and the mixed team. All of them are activists and lawyers from different projects and different social movements, of course, in Jerusalem. Of course, it's a little bit different from the other groups. It's a little bit a different topic, but it was the same project. The main goal of this policy paper is to reflect the analysis of these residents, the main problem and their vision for the future in this question. So in the discussion about the problem, we can see that the main argument of the Palestinian was that the Palestinian residents in Jerusalem are being neglected, that they don't have representation, they don't have political leadership, and nobody is actually taking care of them, nobody is thinking about them. Most of the criticism, of course, was against Israel, against the occupation, against discrimination, and the municipality that don't see them as part of the city. But at the same time, they also had criticism on the Palestinian Authority, that they feel that they don't get support from the Palestinian Authority. They also mentioned that the Palestinian resident don't know their rights in the city, and don't know how to demand their rights and how to struggle to be equal and to have their rights implemented in Jerusalem. The Israeli group, of course, the political situation is different, the political context is different, but the main complaint we heard from the Israeli group was that the important decision about Jerusalem is actually being made in the government, in the national level. It's not taking under consideration the needs, the daily needs in the local level of the resident living in the city. Is usually just in the national level, when the community council that was supposed to address this issue and to bring these voices are actually very, very weak. They don't have any ability to have impact on the policy of Jerusalem in general, of the city. They also complain that there is no transparency in the work of the municipality and there is no long-term vision for the city. And it's interesting to see that actually both groups said that they feel that they don't really trust the leadership of the city, and both of them sense that they feel political weakness, that they don't have a lot to do in order to change the policy of the city. And all the residents feel that everybody is talking about Jerusalem as a political symbol, as a religious symbol. Everybody really likes to talk about it, but nobody is talking about the residents that actually live in this city. This is a very nice example that we can see from the survey of the project. We can learn a lot about the question of political representation in Jerusalem. And here the residents were asked to which actor they would approach in a case of a local conflict or a local crisis. And here it's very clear to see, in orange you can see that the Israelis usually would prefer to go to the formal institutionalized leadership. That it's, for example, the municipality first of all, and then to the community council. But at the same time, the Palestinians would prefer to go to a more traditional, informal leaders. For example, you can see the Mukhtar, the Sheikh, the family members, or the local figures, or even business leaders, or people that are from the neighborhood. And from that, we can learn a lot about the differences in the question of political representation in Israel and Palestinian, East and West. In the discussion about the vision, when the residents were asked to outline their vision for the future for the city, we can see that the Israeli raised two important points. The first was to give more autonomy, more power, more authority to the communities, to the local communities, to the different neighborhoods, but at the same time also to encourage more interaction and more cooperation between the different groups. So it means that you need to have more control on the decision on your life in each community, in each group, but at the same time it should not create segregation and separation to a small cities, and there should be some kind of partnership between the different groups and not separation, and to have more connection between the groups and even shared spaces. In the Palestinian side, we can see that the Palestinian group raised a few ideas how to empower the political representation of the Palestinian in Jerusalem. They suggested a few ideas. One of the ideas was an internal dialogue group, Palestinian and Palestinian internal group, not Palestinian with Israeli, in order to create a stronger conversation, political conversation in the Palestinian society, and also to create more connection between the Palestinian groups and neighborhoods. They feel that there is not enough connection and each neighborhood is a separate island. So they thought it will create more political conversation, and also to invest in the new generation that will be the basis for future leadership for the Palestinian in Jerusalem. And another idea was to encourage to promote advocacy media campaign about the rights of the Palestinian in Jerusalem, that people will know about their rights and how they need to demand them. There was also internal debate in this group about the question that we are all hearing about in the news, about integration in the Israel institutes. And this is, of course, part of an ongoing debate that we can hear in East Jerusalem, about question, for example, of Palestinian students going to study in the Hebrew University and not in Al-Quds, not in the West Bank. And of course, the question that was mentioned already today about participating in the municipal election, that as we heard until today, it's still 2%, but there is still a debate going on. It was also part of the survey in the project. The mixed group actually outlined a vision that will be based on equality and diversity in Jerusalem, that the city will serve all the residents and all the communities will have representation. And they discuss different ideas, different structure, different arrangement to make sure that everybody will be part of it. And one idea is to have some kind of power sharing arrangement that will make sure that everybody is part of the deal. We talked about Northern Ireland or ideas that are similar to these kind of cases. And there was also the interesting idea of international city, that of course it brings us back to 47, when part of the partition plan was the idea of corpus separatum, that Jerusalem will be the idea of the plan of the UN, decision 181, the idea was that Jerusalem will be international city. And by the way, we can mention that even during the peace negotiation, for example, in 2008, when between Olmert and Abu Mazen, the Israeli prime minister, the Palestinian president, they discussed the idea of international regime in the old city, just in the old city, because the importance and the sensitivity of the old city for both sides. Just one last slide. So just to finish, just to conclude, I think that any discussion about the question of political representation and about the political future, the political vision for Jerusalem, need to address eventually the two levels. One level is the level of the high politics, the big political, diplomatic question, what will be the political structure, what will be the political solution for the question of Jerusalem. But the second level is the local, the social, and the community level of Jerusalem. And I think, and it was also raised, I think, today, that there are some efforts to try to solve just the local problem, just to deal with some problem, without talking about the big political structural problem that we already mentioned today. It's very problematic, and it's impossible eventually to deal with it without thinking about the big elephant in the room. But at the same time, you can also see that in the past, during some parts of the peace negotiation, there are efforts to deal with the big question, political question of Jerusalem, without thinking about the resident, without dealing with the small local communities, how it will be managed, the city. It's also very problematic. So at the same time, you need to deal with both of them and to change both of them. And I would just say that, of course, if you want to do this political change, you need, of course, the politicians, the decision makers in both sides, in the national level, municipal level, and the international community, that it's also very important. But eventually, I think we need to add that we need also the civil society in Jerusalem, that, as I mentioned, it's a very important actor, and I think it should have an important role in this process. And we can see, look just on the situation in the recent years in Jerusalem, that they really had an impact on very important things that's going on the ground. We can see that in many cases they were able to change the situation. We can see of what's going on in Syria right now, that the civil society are really the only one who's really trying to do something about it. So because of that, they can be a key factor in the future to change the situation, to struggle for representation, and to try to promote a more inclusive vision for Jerusalem. Thank you very much.